All right, let's get this over with. It is my unscientific calculation that at least 51% of men, the majority, are relational idiots. Now, I take no pride in saying that, and it doesn't really matter because you don't agree with me anyways. But let's not forget that most idiots don't know they're idiots. In fact, the biggest idiots are usually the most convinced that they aren't idiots, right? And I know that because I was convinced I wasn't an idiot. And I was wrong. And I'm not saying there is a problem. I'm not saying you are an idiot. I'm simply saying the biggest indicator that there was a problem in my marriage was my unwillingness to acknowledge that I had any problems. I rarely apologized. I rarely took responsibility for conflict. I rarely explored how to make things better between us. And if you refuse to do those as well, and if you refuse to ask your wife if the things that we talk about in this video are true of you like they were of me, then you're an idiot. Not because you want to be, just because that's what you are. And no one's told you, just like no one told me. But not addressing your relational stupidity doesn't shield you from marital issues. It pours gasoline on them. And I care enough about you and your marriage to tell you the truth. I care enough about you to warn you that if you aren't careful, if you aren't intentional, you will contribute to the death of your marriage. How? Because in general, men have a tendency to be emotionally avoidant. We are completely out of touch with our feelings and emotions, which means that we are definitely out of touch with yours. Which is fine and all, except for the fact that it makes a healthy relationship with a woman almost impossible. Next, we all have a tendency to fall into one of two extremes during conflict. We either escalate the discussion into a fight, interrupting you, correcting you, dismissing you, making excuses, or even blaming you for what you're complaining about, doing anything except actually listening to you. Or we shut down completely. We refuse to acknowledge what you're saying. We go silent and essentially punish you for sharing what was important to you, which only leaves you feeling more unheard and more alone than when you started. Listen, men, pretending there aren't any issues and always putting on your rose-colored glasses isn't helpful. It's hurtful. If it's important to her, it's important to us. Why? Because she's important to us. Next, we generally tend to be the more selfish and prideful and arrogant spouse. That's just a fact. Unfortunately, each of those is incompatible with marital success. They all lead to issues that negatively affect the intimacy and the friendship and the trust that are essential for any marriage to survive. In fact, speaking of intimacy, we have no idea what that even means. And we have no intention or desire about finding out. Which means it's not something we're planning on prioritizing. And you can add vulnerability and validation and empathy to that list as well. Those are just a few things on a long list of what makes us relational idiots. And part of the reason why you are the way you are is because no one taught us to be anything else. You think men are taught emotional intelligence? You think men are taught the value of emotional closeness? You think men are rewarded for pursuing emotional connection? No. You know what they learn by the other men in their life? Crying is for girls, closeness is for sissies, and feelings are weaknesses. Do you know when the average man finally learns that those aren't true? The same place I did. Counseling, right before I was about to be divorced. Men, I have no problem telling you that you need to wake up. If you don't think it can happen to you, you're a fool. And I'm not saying you're the problem, but I am saying you 100% contribute positively or negatively to the problems in your marriage. You absolutely have a choice to stop your destructive behaviors and instead move towards your spouse by intentionally pursuing connection and friendship and trust by first learning what those are and why they're vital to your relationship. Or you have a choice to do what most of us do. Nothing. But that nothing isn't a neutral event. It has disastrous effects on our marriages. Not pursuing intimacy and friendship and closeness and trust is equal to not loving your spouse. They aren't add-ons, they're essentials. They're pillars of what makes a marriage thrive instead of die. Don't wait until your marriage is on the brink of collapse. Don't wait 6 years like I did to actually learn what makes a difference between a marriage that succeeds and one that fails. Don't wait 6 years to learn about our own destructive habits that negatively contribute to the health of our marriage. Don't wait 6 years to learn how to have conflict where there's empathy and validation and understanding and reconnection instead of just blame and yelling and further disconnection. Watch your conflicts. Listen to what she complains about. Don't argue with her. Don't correct her. Don't escalate the fight. Listen to her. She's important to you, right? So then try to understand her. Put your pride and arrogance aside for 5 minutes and listen. Ask questions. Explore her perspective. I know it's hard when you feel attacked. You feel like it's unfair. Of course it's hard when your brain says, fight back. Tell her why she's wrong. And you can do that. I'm just telling you that you're losing her. Every time you punish her for sharing what's important to her, you're losing her. Every time you confirm that you're not a safe place for her to share her feelings, you're losing her. Don't wait 6 years to actually ask your wife, how are we doing really? Do you ever feel neglected? Do you ever feel lonely in this marriage? Don't wait 6 years to actually ask her, how do you feel loved the most? Because for a lot of you, it'll be too late by then. And if you're a Christian, if you're a Jesus follower, we don't have an option here. We have to get this right. We have to get love right. Anyone remember the new commandment from Jesus? Love others the way I have loved you. But most of us can't do that because we refuse to learn what love requires of us in this marriage. Philippians 2 has a good definition. It says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of the others. In your relationships with each other, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant." So how did Jesus love you? Sacrificially and selflessly, putting your needs above his comfort. Is that what you do? Or do you tell her that she's too needy? At the end of the day, my wife deserved better than me. But that didn't mean to quit. It meant to step into the role that God had called me into as a leader and a husband. A leader that serves and protects, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. A leader that repents and admits mistakes and does something to correct them. Men, admitting your mistakes isn't weakness, it's strength. Pretending that you don't have any is weakness. Admitting and expressing your feelings and emotions in a calm and controlled way is strength, not weakness. Pretending you don't have any and that you don't care about your wife's is weakness. Serving and selflessly loving your wife, valuing her and honoring her is not weakness. It's true leadership, and it's attractive, and it's compelling, and it's contagious. Does your wife feel served? Does she feel valued? Does she feel like her interests are important to you? Men, you aren't the sole problem, but you have a unique opportunity to influence and grow your marriages towards something great. How? By creating an environment of appreciation and affection and admiration. By taking a risk and going first. By cultivating a culture of emotional safety. By inviting her feelings into this space instead of pretending you wish she didn't have any. By intentionally taking steps towards closeness and friendship and trust. This is what makes the difference between a relational idiot and success in their most important relationships. If she's important to you, then stop doing what's not working. I don't care what your dad did. I don't care what your coach taught you about women. I don't even care what you think is best. I'm simply trying to tell you what's proven to work. So what's proven to work? Humility and selflessness and intentionality and healthy conflict resolution and the pursuit of intimacy and friendship and trust. Those always win out. Can you honestly say you're pursuing those? Do you know what always loses and always breaks people apart and always tears down relationships? Pride and arrogance and selfishness and emotional avoidance and dismissiveness. You know what the only problem is? I've never met a man who thinks he has a problem with any one of them.